Your brain is your body's command center. Inside your skull, 86 billion neurons work together, controlling every thought, every movement, every memory you'll ever have. But when trauma strikes, this complex network faces one of its greatest challenges, and the journey that follows is often misunderstood. For John Ronald, that day at the baseball game seemed like any other, until it wasn't.
When I was 14 years old, I really liked baseball, and I was at a professional baseball game. And I was hit on the head with a line drive foul ball going over 100 miles an hour, or 160 kilometers per hour. And this half of my skull was shattered.
A split second. That's all it took to change John's life forever. But what happened next would challenge everything he, and those around him, thought they knew about brain injury. Brain injury occurs in two distinct phases. The primary injury happens at the moment of impact, when physical trauma directly damages brain tissue. But what many people don't understand is that a secondary injury follows. In the hours and days after the initial trauma, inflammation, chemical changes, and cellular stress continue to affect the brain.
Different brain injuries will affect different people in different ways.
As John points out, one of the biggest misconceptions about brain injury is that everyone experiences it the same way. But just as every person is unique, every brain injury creates its own pattern of effects. Two people with similar injuries might have completely different symptoms and recovery journeys. Inside the injured brain, a complex cascade of changes begins. Blood flow becomes critically disrupted in two ways. Some regions receive too little blood, a state called hypoperfusion, starving brain cells of oxygen. Other areas experience hyperperfusion, where excess blood flow can increase pressure inside the skull. What's fascinating is that the brain needs exactly the right amount of blood flow, not too much, not too little, to function properly. After injury, this delicate balance is disrupted, and each person's brain responds differently to these changes. At the microscopic level, injury triggers what scientists call a cascade of events. Think of it as a chain reaction. First, brain cells experience an energy crisis as their powerhouses, the mitochondria, begin to fail. Then, a flood of chemicals called neurotransmitters is released, particularly one called glutamate. This leads to a dangerous influx of calcium into brain cells. The brain's immune response activates, similar to what happens when you get a cut or bruise, but inside your skull. This can lead to swelling, or edema, which further complicates recovery. Some cells die immediately from the injury, called necrosis. Others enter a delayed process called apoptosis, or programmed cell death, which can continue for days after the initial injury. These complex cellular changes help explain why each survivor's experience is unique and why symptoms can evolve over time. It's also why the hours and days following an injury are so critical for treatment. Understanding that each brain injury is unique has important implications for recovery. There is no one-size-fits-all treatment. Each person's recovery path needs to be as individual as their injury. For Valentina, understanding her brain injuries was the first step toward recovery. After years of living with undiagnosed trauma, she found hope and guidance through the Victoria Brain Injury Society. With their support, she began to navigate her healing journey, discovering new tools and a supportive community along the way.
I was given a case manager and attended TBI courses and group activities like art therapy. I learned so much from others, and the compassion, acceptance, and mutual respect given by the Victoria Brain Injury Society staff, peer support, and clients, it was wonderfully addictive to be near. I was inspired by others' survival stories and the strength each person with TBI, traumatic brain injury, has to withstand negative attention from the ignorant and discover empowerment.
Get as much help as you can. I've just been very, very lucky with the supports. I think brain injury is something that's difficult for people to understand because it is so complex.
Brain injury isn't a single uniform condition. It's as varied as the individuals who experience it. But through understanding, support, and community, each survivor can find their path forward. The journey may be long, but no one needs to walk it alone.